The Labour Party have unveiled new plans to clamp down on sexual harassment in the workplace. New figures show that almost 5 million women experience such behaviour at work each year. And this, of course, follows Sir Keir Starmer's U-turn on gender in July after he declared that a woman is an adult female. Finally, it took him 2 years. At the beginning, he thought that a woman did have a penis, then she doesn't. But the party's hardened stance on gender contradicted his previous pledge to change the law to allow trans people to self-declare gender. So this is what they're talking about now. So I'm still joining me to go head-to-head is broadcaster Amy Nickell-Turner and Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib. Amy, I'm going to start with you. Do you trust the Labour Party on women's issues?
Yes, I certainly do.
But how is this?
The Labour Party are the party of the Equal Pay Act. The Labour Party are the party that passed the right to choose. The Labour Party are the architects of the Equality Act.
Which Labour
Party? The Labour Party you can trust
Yeah.
on women's issues.
But the Labour Party
They brought more female MPs into politics than any other party.
So what about the behaviour towards Rosie Duffield, then? Because she was frightened to go to her own party conference because she had confirmed that a woman...
Well, you know as well as I do that Rosie Duffield is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist.
Oh, she's not here to defend herself, so I just want you to explain why she is.
I think she would be pretty open about that fact.
What's a radical feminist?
What is that?
Trans-exclusionary. So Rosie Duffield doesn't accept trans women as women, and that's why she finds herself in a spot of bother. But see, you're going to find yourself in a spot of bother with that type of with that type of statement, because you know that would go against the Equalities Act. So if somebody is undergoing gender reassignment, even if they're at social transition stage, they are recognised as the gender that they are by law.
Yeah, OK.
So that would mean...
I'm stating biological fact.
Well,
so
that kind of becomes irrelevant.
No, it is relevant to me. Biological fact is that a trans woman is a biological man. OK, and that's not trans-exclusionary, that is the truth. But that's the truth, isn't it? But am I right or wrong?
I think
is a trans woman a biological man? Just tell me that, Amy.
You're wrong.
No, so you're saying that a trans woman is not a biological man?
In rare cases, the sex you were assigned at birth, your biological sex, which is immutable, right, fine.
OK, so you've admitted it.
But your biological sex can become irrelevant in the eyes of the law, in the way of the way you live.
I'm talking about facts, so
in every fibre of your experience.
So if a trans woman calls up a hospital who is a biological man and says, I think I'm having a miscarriage and I need somebody to come and see me, you think they should send an ambulance because in the eyes of the law, that trans woman who is a biological man is actually a woman?
I've just got completely lost on what you're saying.
So imagine
you're talking about somebody that hasn't had gender reassignment,
they're a trans woman.
But I don't know the components of their biology. I don't know their physiological bearing. You don't know what my physiology is, really. You know I'm a woman.
So hang on, Amy.
But you don't know if I've got all these...
Stop talking. So you think that after a man who has now decided to be a woman, so
it's not something you decide now.
I need to finish.
Issue.
You have to let me finish the sentence.
Okay.
So if you interrupt, you won't know what I'm saying.
All right.
So in your view,
I'm going to take some notes because it's getting complicated.
That a trans woman who is a biological man, once they've had gender reassignment, can now claim that they are pregnant.
No.
So is a trans woman a
when did I ever say that?
Well, I've just said
you could get a...
So I've just asked you the scenario of a trans woman who's a man calling the hospital saying, I'm pregnant, I need someone to send me an ambulance because I'm having some sort of miscarriage or something like that. You would think that hospital would send an ambulance.
That's an incredibly bizarre proposition to put to me. I don't think that scenario has ever happened. You need to give me an example of that.
Would say that you're a trans woman and so you're a man. So
I think the ambulance would say, you're a fantasist, goodbye, surely.
She just called you.
Because there is no trans woman who's saying they're having a miscarriage. I don't understand this proposition.
The point I'm making is that you know that that's ridiculous. You've even called somebody who would say that as a fantasist, so you know their biology matters. So my point is that a trans woman is a biological man and they cannot be pregnant, they cannot have a baby.
I think you're conflating, which is something Rosie Duffield does, you're conflating biological sex with gender. So that's not the way...
I think that you are actually separating biological sex from gender, and I don't agree with that. That just makes me trouble.
Well, I mean, you know, for me, there are only two sexes, and there are only two genders, and I wouldn't call a man who identifies himself as woman, as a trans woman. I'd say he's still a trans man. He's a man that is trans. And I think part of the issue here...
I'm
digressing slightly. I'm digressing slightly, but it's an important point, because language is often being hijacked to promote these kind of ideologies. He's still a man.
He's still a man.
And he may recognise himself to be a woman. He may wish to be called Jane, and I'd be very happy to call him Jane. But he is still a man. And at best, he's a trans man because he identifies as something else. He's trans, he's a man, he's transed. He's a trans man. He's not a trans woman. There's nothing woman about him.
Apart from maybe a wig and lipstick, or maybe he's had some cosmetic surgery.
There's nothing woman about him. Gender dysphoria, recognising yourself to be a sex which you're not, is a psychiatric condition. It's not an ideological position. It's a psychiatric condition. And I agree with you that we shouldn't be prejudiced against people who have that, gender dysphoria. But we must recognise, in order for society to be sane and for government regulations and policies not to be made that are contrary to the women's interests, apart from anything else, we've got to be sensible in the way that we address this issue. A man is a man, and thankfully, because I think we talk about testosterone levels off air, thankfully women are women. And, you know, and that's
I think there's this whole reductive way of speaking about women's rights, women's issues, as if they boil down to who isn't allowed in a toilet cubicle, is where we're going wrong. We need to talk about women's issues, medical misogyny, unaffordable childcare, a failure to tackle violence against women and girls.
But if you can't define a woman...
Why are we focusing on this nonsense issue that affects 0.05%?
No.
The trans community is 0.5% of the population.
But what about women?
So why are we focusing and harassing this community? Then the rights of the trans community are not at odds with women's rights.
Amy,
they never have been.
Because the debate has been compromised, because the debate has gone ridiculous, frankly. Our children are being hijacked. They're being taught at school that if they wish to identify as another sex, they can. They're being taught that there are 72 genders.
They are not being taught that.
That is precisely what... They're also being taught that if they're white...
Do you know where that 72 genders thing actually came from? It was all the different ways different cultures describe third sex, non-binary gender. That was just a list. So you have two-spirit, third gender, whatever. It was just... it was never 72 genders, and it's been completely misrepresented across the board, and it's incredibly frustrating to see. Since 2010, we've had the Equalities Act brought in to just give trans people the dignity and respect they deserve. We've had no problem. We haven't had an upsurge in these women's spaces.
Kemi Badenoch is working on making sure that biological sex actually matters, so she's making sure... Because at the time it was written, we didn't have this division. At the time it was written, we hadn't separated biology from reality. So now things have changed. Kemi Badenoch is working on actually making sure that biological sex is what actually matters, not the sex that you...
Well, you're going to get a big shock when all the trans men come in the women's loos, because that's what you're asking for, ultimate.
But they shouldn't be allowed...
Women. Trans men are women, though. They're women. They're biological women. Why would I be shocked about that?
Oh, what, coming in? Yeah, sorry.
They're women.
Yeah, I keep getting the lecture.
So Ben's going to be sharing a changing room with a load of women.
That's not the main issue. The main issue is the hijacking of language and the actual...
Yeah. And it doesn't stop just with gender ideology. It also... It moves into ethnic minorities. It moves into this, equality, DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion. Yeah. And our children, and I wanted to focus on the children, our children are being taught a whole plethora of ridiculous ideological nonsense, such as, for example, if you're white and you don't recognise you've got a privilege, you're unconsciously racist. That just being white in itself gives you some kind of edge that you need to have taken away from you in order to level the playing field.
Into critical race theory. Critical race theory is here, but that's a whole nother discussion.
No, but it's part of the same ideological plethora that they are promoting in schools. And the other thing that our children are being taught is that effectively being a living organism and producing carbon, our very existence is a threat to the planet. And we're soon going to be measuring our own carbon emissions as individuals. Our children are being brought up not to have self-confidence. That is deeply damaging to a society. And we are hollowing out the United Kingdom because we can't get our language straight. We need to start calling women, women, men, men. That makes no difference what colour you are, what creed you are, what religion you are. It's the content of your character, not the colour of your skin.
So you're basically endorsing transphobia, denying racism and claiming we live in a post-racial society?
If you want to identify as John...
In which trans people don't exist? Because that's what you've just posited.
I think you've paraphrased that in quite a negative manner, and I think you've actually made that... That doesn't sound like what he was saying to me. So if that's what you've interpreted from what he's saying, I find that quite interesting.
You could identify yourself as John, and I would call you John, and I would treat you with ultimate respect, and it would make no difference to me in the workplace.
Sound that way.
But I would not recognise you to be a man.
And who's that helping? I've been around people who have been routinely misgendered, and I've seen the damage it can do, and that is what contributes to this horrendous self-esteem.
Hang on, Amy, you said you've been misgendered. What damage did it do
I've been around people who have been misgendered.
So somebody's pointed out a reality, so broken the illusion.
Can you not see?
What did it cause?
But the reality is that it harms people.
Well, the reality is that they're not the gender that they say they are. You could do your best.
We are a compassionate and respectful society. We are civilised people. If I routinely called you a man all the time, how would that make you feel?
Well,
you'd say,
she's not a man.
But I'm not a man, Amy.
Exactly. As three gender-conforming people, it's so simple for us to sit here and say how this will and won't make you feel. But I can assure you, if you were routinely misgendered, it would not have a good impact on your self-esteem, which you are apparently so concerned about.
So, Amy, basically, in order to keep those people happy, we need to lie.
I can't understand why including people is so worrying.
You're changing the language. You're changing the language. You're talking about something else. Listen, we're going to move on because we're not going to get anywhere.
We'll take too much time with this.
It's an important thing, though, because I'm asking whether you trust Labour with women's rights.
There are such a plethora of issues facing women. And the inclusion of trans people within the conversation is not a concern.